He was Lebanon's most ruthless corporate raider. She sold roasted peanuts on the streets of Lagos for 50 cents a bag. When his business partners dared him to marry a random street vendor as the ultimate power move, he thought it would be the easiest money he'd ever made. But what she revealed on their honeymoon didn't just shock him. It destroyed everything he thought he knew about power, pride, and the devastating cost of treating human hearts like business transactions. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Karim Mansouri had built his empire on one simple principle: everything and everyone had a price. At 34, he controlled shipping routes from Beirut to Barcelona, owned luxury hotels in 3 countries, and had a reputation for dismantling family businesses with the same cold precision a surgeon might remove a tumor. Clean, efficient, and absolutely merciless. The penthouse suite of the Four Seasons in Beirut was his sanctuary. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a commanding view of the Mediterranean, while the interior spoke in muted tones of marble, chrome, and leather. No photographs, no personal touches, just the stark elegance of a man who had learned early that emotional attachments were liabilities in the world of high-stakes business. On this particular evening in March, Karim sat across from 3 men who represented Lebanon's most influential business families. They had gathered for what they called their monthly strategy session, though it was really an excuse for Lebanon's elite to drink 20-year-old scotch and compete over who could execute the most audacious business maneuver. "Remember the Khoury textile empire?" laughed Fadi Nasser, swirling his drink. Karim dismantled a 60-year-old family business in 3 months. The old man actually cried when he signed the papers. Karim's expression remained impassive. "Sentiment is expensive. He couldn't afford it. But that's exactly why you're getting soft," interjected Samir Khalil, the oil magnate's son. "When was the last time you did something that was actually required creativity?" The room fell silent. Challenging Karim Mansouri was like questioning a shark's ability to swim, dangerous and potentially fatal to one's business prospects. "Define creativity," Karim said, his voice carrying the quiet menace that had made grown men reconsider merger deals. "Something unpredictable, something that proves you're still the man who bought his first company with money he borrowed against his father's funeral," Samir pressed. "We're starting to think success has made you comfortable." Karim set down his glass with deliberate care. The subtle click of crystal against marble seemed to echo in the suddenly tense room. "Name your challenge." The 3 men exchanged glances. This was the moment they had been building toward all evening. "Marriage," said Fadi, grinning, "but not to some socialite or business merger. Something unorthodox." Elaborate. "Tomorrow we fly to Lagos. We pick a street vendor, completely random. You marry her within 48 hours, take her on a honeymoon, and then, well, then you prove that even the most impossible acquisition can be made when you have the right leverage." Samir leaned forward. "1 week. If you can't make her fall completely in love with you, genuinely, not just gratitude for money, then you lose." "And if I win the Khalil shipping contract, exclusive rights to all our Mediterranean routes for the next 5 years. That's worth it." Fadi paused for effect. "About 40 million. Karim's mind was already calculating. 40 million was significant, but more importantly, exclusive shipping rights would give him a stranglehold on luxury imports to Lebanon. It was the kind of strategic advantage that could define the next decade of his business empire. The stakes if I lose? You fund our new resort development in Cyprus. 50 million, no questions asked. Plus, you step back from the Khoury acquisition and let the family keep their company. Karim almost smiled. They had researched this carefully, chosen the one bet that would appeal to both his greed and his pride. The Khoury textile company was days away from final acquisition. Letting it slip would be like releasing a prize fish after a year-long hunt. "You're betting I can't seduce a street vendor?" Karim asked, his tone suggesting he found the very idea amusing. "We're betting you can't make someone love you when they have nothing to gain from it," Samir clarified. "No business mergers, no family connections, no social climbing, just raw human emotion. And she has to be genuinely poor," added Fadi. "No middle-class vendors or small business owners. Someone who sells goods on the street because she has no other choice." Karim stood, walked to the window, and looked out at the glittering city below. Lebanon's capital spread out like a circuit board, each light representing money, power, influence. He had conquered this city, made it bend to his will. The idea that some random woman in Lagos could resist his particular combination of charm, wealth and strategic manipulation was almost insulting. "1 week," he repeated, 7 days on honeymoon. She has to confess genuine love, not gratitude, not infatuation. Love. How do we measure that? Samir pulled out a small recording device. Everything gets documented, conversations, interactions, the works. We'll know if it's real. Karim turned back to the room. "And if she discovers it's a bet? Then you lose immediately. 50 million, plus you give up Khoury textiles." The silence stretched for nearly a minute. Outside, Beirut's traffic hummed with the constant energy of commerce and ambition. Inside, 4 of Lebanon's most powerful men waited to see if Karim Mansouri would accept the most unconventional challenge of his career. "When do we leave?" Karim asked. Finally, the grins that spread across his companions' faces told him everything he needed to know. They had expected him to refuse, to find some excuse to avoid the risk. Instead, they had just handed him what he considered an inevitable victory. Fadi raised his glass. "To creativity." "Too easy money," Karim replied, but his mind was already working through the logistics. Lagos was a city of 20 million people, street vendors numbered in the tens of thousands. He would need to move quickly, efficiently, and with absolute precision. As the men finalized details, flights, accommodations, the specific legal requirements for a rapid marriage, Karim found himself genuinely curious about the challenge ahead. He had acquired companies, manipulated stock prices, and orchestrated hostile takeovers across 3 continents. But he had never attempted to acquire something as intangible as human emotion. The irony wasn't lost on him. His entire business philosophy was built on the premise that everything could be bought, sold, or leveraged. Now he would have the opportunity to prove that even love, the most supposedly pure of human experiences, was just another transaction waiting for the right offer. By midnight, the contracts were signed, the flights booked, and the terms agreed upon. Karim retired to his bedroom, a stark space dominated by a king-sized bed and a wall of monitors displaying global stock prices. As he undressed, he caught his reflection in the mirror, tall, lean, with the kind of sharp features that photographers loved and business rivals feared. Tomorrow, he will fly to Lagos. Within 48 hours, he would be married to a woman whose name he didn't know, whose language he might not speak, whose world was as foreign to him as his was to her. And within a week, he would have $40 million in shipping contracts and the satisfaction of proving that human emotion was just another market to be cornered. What Karim Mansouri didn't know, as he fell asleep in his climate-controlled penthouse high above Beirut, was that some acquisitions cost more than money, some victories destroy the very thing you're trying to win, and some street vendors in Lagos carry secrets that can break even the most carefully constructed heart. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Private jet at Murtala Muhammad International Airport, the controlled environment of his Lebanese penthouse felt like a distant memory. The air was thick with exhaust fumes, spices, and the unmistakable energy of a city where 25 million people fought daily for survival and success. His business partners had spared no expense on accommodations. The Echo Hotel and Suites stood like a glass and steel fortress against Lagos Island's skyline, its luxury a sharp contrast to the bustling streets below. From his suite on the 40th floor, Karim could see the sprawling metropolis stretching endlessly in every direction, a maze of highways, markets, and neighborhoods that seemed to pulse with constant motion. "Overwhelming, isn't it?" Fadi said, joining him at the window. The three Lebanese businessmen had arrived on the same flight, their excitement barely contained. For them, this was entertainment. For Karim, it was just another transaction. "It's logistics," Karim replied, studying the street patterns below. "Every city has a rhythm. You just need to identify the flow." Samir pulled out a tablet, already loaded with Lagos city maps and demographic data. "We've identified the optimal areas. Victoria Island has the highest concentration of street vendors, but they might be too educated. Many speak multiple languages and have some business training. Mushin and Alaba markets are more authentic. Define authenticity," Karim said. "Women who sell because they have to, not because they choose to. Single mothers, primary breadwinners for extended families, people who measure success in daily survival rather than monthly profits." Karim nodded. The parameters made sense from a strategic standpoint. A vendor with options might be harder to impress with wealth. Someone with genuine desperation would be more likely to see marriage to a wealthy Lebanese businessman as salvation rather than suspicion. "Transport?" he asked. "3 cars, local drivers, security detail. We'll move through different neighborhoods, film everything for documentation purposes, and you'll make the selection when you see the right opportunity." The word hung in the air, opportunity. Not a person, not a woman, not a potential bride. Opportunity. Karim appreciated the clinical precision of the language. That afternoon, they began the hunt. Lagos traffic was unlike anything Karim had experienced. In Beirut, aggressive driving was an art form. In Lagos, it was a survival skill. Their convoy of black SUVs crawled through streets where cars, motorcycles, buses, and pedestrians competed for space in a choreographed chaos that somehow avoided complete disaster. The first market they visited was Belogan, a sprawling commercial district where vendors sold everything from electronics to traditional fabrics. The narrow streets were lined with small stalls, and women balanced impossible loads on their heads while navigating crowds that would have been claustrophobic to the average tourist. "Too commercial," Fadi observed as they watched a vendor negotiate with a customer in fluent English and Yoruba. "She owns the stall, has employees. This is business, not desperation." They moved to Mushin, where the atmosphere was grittier, more urgent. Here, vendors sat on small stools beside plastic tarps, covered with goods, phone cards, cigarettes, snacks, household items. The profit margins were measured in Naira and Kobo, the equivalent of dollars and cents. Karim studied each woman with the same analytical approach he used to evaluate potential acquisitions. Age, demeanor, apparent education level, signs of family, responsibility, indicators of economic vulnerability. It was cold, calculated, and exactly how he had trained himself to approach every significant decision. "That one," Samir pointed to a young woman selling fried plantains from a wooden cart. She looked about 20, wore a colorful head wrap, and had the kind of bright smile that suggested either genuine happiness or professional necessity. "Too young," Karim said, "and she's laughing too much. Someone that cheerful in these circumstances is either naive or putting on an act." They continued through the market. A woman selling batteries and phone chargers caught their attention. She spoke quietly to customers, had two small children playing nearby, and wore a gold band on her ring finger. Married, Fadi noted. Or divorced, Samir countered. Many women here keep wearing rings for protection. Karim approached the woman, switching to French on the assumption that educated Nigerians might speak the colonial language. Excusez-moi, madame. She looked up, surprised but not alarmed. English, please. I speak English. I'm looking for directions, Karim said, noting her direct eye contact and confident posture. The National Theatre. Very far from here. You need a bus or taxi. Her English was clear, grammatically correct. You are a tourist? Business. Karim replied, then tested her further. Are you from Lagos originally? Yes, I was born here. I know this city very well. She gestured to her goods. Do you need a battery, phone charger? Very good price. As they spoke, Karim assessed her responses. Educated, street-smart, comfortable with foreign visitors. But when he mentioned being Lebanese, her expression shifted. Slightly. Not fear, but a subtle wariness that suggested she understood the implications of wealth and power. Interesting, he said as they walked away, but too savvy. She sized me up immediately. The pattern continued through 3 more markets. Women who were either too business-oriented, too suspicious, or too embedded in family structures that would complicate a rapid courtship and marriage. By evening, Karim was beginning to understand why his partners had chosen this particular challenge. Perhaps we're overthinking this, Fadi suggested as they sat in the hotel restaurant that night, reviewing footage from the day. You're looking for someone vulnerable but not desperate, educated but not sophisticated, independent but not suspicious. That's a very narrow target. Every successful acquisition requires precise targeting, Karim replied. If we select the wrong candidate, the entire operation fails. But this isn't a corporate takeover, Samir pointed out. It's human emotion. Maybe the strategy needs to be more organic. Karim studied the tablet screen, showing dozens of photos from their market visits. Each woman represented a different challenge, a different approach. But none had triggered the intuitive recognition he was looking for, the sense that here was someone whose emotional defenses could be systematically dismantled and rebuilt around gratitude and love. Tomorrow we will expand the search, he decided. Different neighborhoods, different types of vendors, and we adjust our approach. How? Less direct observation, more interaction. I need to see how they respond to wealth, to attention, to the possibility of change. Data gathering isn't enough. I need to see their psychological profiles under pressure. The next morning brought them to Alaba International Market, one of West Africa's largest commercial hubs. The scale was overwhelming. Hundreds of thousands of people buying and selling everything from automobile parts to traditional medicines. The noise was constant. A mixture of negotiations, conversations, music, and the mechanical sounds of commerce. Near the electronics section, they found what Karim had been looking for. She sat behind a small table covered with phone accessories, cases, chargers, earphones, arranged with mathematical precision. Unlike many vendors who called out to potential customers, she waited quietly, observing the crowd with intelligent eyes that seemed to catalogue every detail. Karim estimated her age at 26 or 27. She wore a simple blue dress and matching head wrap, both clean but clearly well worn. No jewelry except for a thin chain around her neck that disappeared beneath her dress collar. When customers approached, she spoke softly, named prices without negotiation, and made change with swift efficiency. Watch, Karim said to his companions as a well-dressed businessman stopped at her table. The man examined several phone cases, asked questions about quality and durability, then attempted to negotiate the price downward. The woman listened politely, then shook her head once. The man tried again, offering slightly more than his initial counteroffer. Again she declined. Finally, he either paid her asking price or walked away. "She doesn't negotiate," Samir observed. "She knows her value," Karim corrected. "That's different." They watched for 20 minutes. The woman, who they overheard being called Adunni by another vendor, sold steadily but never aggressively. She helped customers find exactly what they needed, offered advice about phone compatibility, and even directed some people to other vendors when she didn't have the right product. "Professional ethics in a phone case stall," Fadi murmured. "Interesting." "It's strategic positioning," Karim said. "She's building customer loyalty through reliability rather than competing on price. That suggests long-term thinking." What struck him most was her composure. While other vendors chatted among themselves during slow periods, Adunni used the time to reorganize her inventory, clean her displays, or study a small notebook that she kept beneath her table. She worked alone, no family members helping, no children playing nearby, no husband stopping by with lunch. Independent but not isolated, Karim analyzed. Intelligent but focused on survival rather than expansion, and... He paused, watching as a young boy approached her table with obvious hunger in his eyes. The child had no money, but Adunni reached beneath her table and handed him a small packet of biscuits. She did this without fanfare, almost secretively, and the boy ran off quickly. "Compassionate," Karim finished. "She feeds hungry children from her own supplies. That's either genuine kindness or very sophisticated image management." "How do we find out which?" Samir asked. Karim smiled for the first time since arriving in Lagos. "We will test her." That afternoon, he sent one of the local drivers to purchase phone accessories from Adunni while wearing a wire. The transaction was routine, professional, unremarkable. But during the conversation, the driver mentioned being new to Lagos, struggling to find work, supporting family back in his village. Through the earpiece, Karim heard Adunni's response. "Lagos is difficult, but there are opportunities if you are patient and honest. What kind of work do you seek?" The driver, following Karim's instructions, mentioned needing a job with regular hours to send money home. Adunni gave him specific directions to 2 employment agencies, warned him about common scams targeting rural migrants, and suggested neighborhoods where he might find affordable housing. "She spent 10 minutes giving career advice to a stranger," Fadi noted as they reviewed the recording. "That's either remarkable generosity or remarkable naivety." "Or remarkable intelligence," Karim said. "She understands that her success depends on the health of the entire community. Help newcomers succeed, and they become regular customers. It's a long-term investment disguised as kindness. So she's perfect for your purposes." Karim nodded slowly. Adunni represented exactly what he needed: intelligence without sophistication, independence without suspicion, compassion that could be leveraged into gratitude. She was educated enough to appreciate the life he could offer, but grounded enough in struggle to find his wealth genuinely transformative. "Tomorrow," he said, "we will make contact." But as he fell asleep that night in his luxury hotel suite, Karim found himself thinking not about acquisition strategies or emotional manipulation techniques, but about the way Adunni had quietly fed that hungry child. There was something in that gesture, something private and instinctive, that didn't fit neatly into his analytical framework. He dismissed the thought. Sentiment was expensive, and he couldn't afford it. Not with $40 million in shipping. Contracts on the line, the morning air in Alaba Market carried the scent of rain-washed concrete and frying oil. Karim had spent 2 hours preparing for this encounter, selecting clothes that conveyed wealth without ostentation, rehearsing his approach, and reviewing every detail his surveillance had revealed about Adunni's routine. She arrived at her Stall precisely at 7:30 a.m., just as she had for the past 3 days of observation. Today, however, Karim would not be watching from a distance. He approached her table alone, having left his business partners strategically positioned throughout the market with cameras and recording equipment. The plan was simple. Establish contact, gauge her receptiveness to attention from a wealthy foreigner, and begin the delicate process of emotional manipulation that would culminate in marriage within 48 hours. "Good morning," he said, in English, stopping at her display of phone accessories. Aduni looked up from organizing her inventory. Her eyes were alert, assessing, the look of someone who had learned to read customers quickly and accurately. "Good morning. Do you need something for your phone?" "Actually, yes." Karim pulled out his iPhone, a model that cost more than most Lagos residents earned in 6 months. "The screen protector is cracked. Do you have a replacement?" She examined his phone with professional focus, turning it over in her hands. Her fingers were steady, precise, the hands of someone who worked with small, valuable objects all day. "This model, very expensive. I have a protector, but you should go to the Apple Store in Victoria Island. Better quality for a phone like this." It was exactly the response Karim had hoped for. Honesty over profit, even when dealing with someone who clearly had money to spend. "But I'm here now," he said, smiling. "And I prefer supporting local businesses." "Local business?" She repeated the phrase, then smiled slightly. "You are not local. Lebanese. But I believe good business is good business, regardless of location." Aduni nodded slowly, then selected a screen protector from her inventory. "This one will fit. Not the same quality as the Apple Store, but good enough. 2,000 naira. Karim handed her a 10,000 naira note without hesitation. As she reached for change, he waved it away. "Keep it. Call it a cultural exchange fee." The reaction was immediate and telling. Aduni's expression shifted from polite professionalism to cautious suspicion. She set the change on the table between them, clearly uncomfortable. "I charge a fair price. You pay a fair price. No need for extra." "I insist," Karim said gently. "Good service deserves good compensation." "And what do you expect for this good compensation?" The question was direct, uncompromising. Aduni had obviously dealt with wealthy men who offered money with unstated expectations. Karim felt a flicker of genuine admiration. She was even more perceptive than his surveillance had suggested. "Nothing," he said truthfully. "I expect nothing." They stared at each other for a long moment. Around them, the market bustled with its usual energy, but their small corner had become an island of tension and possibility. "You are a businessman," Aduni said finally. It wasn't a question. "Yes." "And you are far from home." "Also yes." "Then, why are you buying a phone protector from a market stall, instead of shopping in Victoria Island, where Lebanese businessmen usually go?" The question cut straight to the heart of his deception. Karim had anticipated curiosity, but not this level of direct interrogation. "Perhaps I wanted to see the real Lagos," he said. "Not the sanitized version they show tourists." "And what do you see?" He gestured toward her table, her carefully arranged inventory, the precision with which she conducted business. "Intelligence, pride, efficiency, the same qualities I look for in any business partner." "Business partner." Aduni repeated the phrase with slight amusement. "I sell phone cases. You probably own companies." "Size doesn't determine value," Karim said. "You built this operation yourself, didn't you? No investors, no family money, just your own effort and judgment." For the first time, her defensive posture relaxed slightly. "How do you know this?" "Because I recognize entrepreneurship when I see it. The way you organize your inventory, the way you price your goods, the way you maintain customer relationships. It's textbook business development, just on a different scale. Aduni studied him with new interest. Do you observe people for business? I observe people because people are business. Everything else, products, services, technology, those are just tools. Success comes from understanding human motivation. And what motivates me? The question was a test, and Karim knew it. Answer wrong, and she would dismiss him as another wealthy foreigner trying to impress a local woman with pseudo-profound insights. Answer correctly, and he would have opened the first door in what needed to be a very rapid courtship. Independence, he said after considering. You work alone because you trust your own judgment more than anyone else's. You charge fixed prices because you've calculated exactly what your time and products are worth. And you give directions to strangers and food to hungry children because you understand that your success is connected to your community's success. You're motivated by the desire to be valuable to yourself and to others without being dependent on anyone. The silence that followed was different from their earlier tension. Aduni was genuinely thinking, processing not just his words, but the implications of his observation. You see much for someone who just wants a phone protector, she said finally. I see someone who built something meaningful from nothing. That's rare anywhere, but especially rare in a market where most people are just trying to survive. And, what did you build? The question caught him off guard. His prepared responses focused on impressing her with his wealth and success, not engaging in genuine conversation about his background. Shipping companies, he said. I move goods between countries, connect markets, and facilitate trade. You make money from other people's needs. That's one way to look at it. How do you look at it? Karim paused. The conversation had moved beyond his scripted approach into territory that required actual honesty. I look at it as creating efficiency. Goods need to move from where they're produced to where they're needed. I make that happen faster and cheaper than it would happen otherwise. But you make profit from this efficiency. Yes. And if there was no profit, would you still do it? The question struck deeper than she probably intended. Would he? Had he ever done anything purely for the benefit of others, without calculating personal advantage? I don't know, he admitted. I've never been in a position where profit wasn't part of the equation. Aduni nodded thoughtfully. At least you are honest about this. Their conversation was interrupted by a customer, an elderly woman seeking a phone charger for an ancient Nokia model. Karim watched as Aduni switched effortlessly back into professional mode, explaining compatibility issues, offering alternatives, and finally selling a universal charger with patient instructions for its use. You speak Yoruba? He asked when the customer left. Yoruba, English, some French, a little Arabic, she replied. Languages are good for business. Arabic? Where did you learn Arabic? University. I studied international relations before. She paused, then shrugged. Before life became more complicated. Another piece of the puzzle. University education in international relations explained her sophisticated understanding of trade and cultural dynamics. But something had interrupted. Her studies forced her into street vending instead of a professional career. What happened? Karim asked gently. Aduni was quiet for a long moment, reorganizing phone cases that didn't need organizing. My father died during my final year. Heart attack. He was a taxi driver and worked 16 hours every day to pay my school fees. When he died, I had to choose between finishing my degree or supporting my younger siblings. University degree. Doesn't help if your family starves while you study. The revelation hit Karim with unexpected force. This wasn't just a street vendor with natural business instincts. This was an educated woman who had sacrificed her professional future for family responsibility. The tragedy of interrupted potential made her current situation both more impressive and more heartbreaking. "How many siblings?" he asked. "Three, two sisters and one brother, all in school now because I work here every day." She said this with pride, not self-pity. "My father wanted us educated. I will make sure his dream continues, even if not for me." "And your mother?" "She cleans, offices at night. We work different hours, with the same goal." Karim felt something unfamiliar stirring in his chest. Respect, admiration, and something uncomfortably close to genuine emotion. This woman had given up her own education to ensure her siblings could have theirs. She had turned personal sacrifice into family advancement, built a sustainable business from nothing, and maintained her dignity throughout it all. "You could go back," he said. "Finish your degree. International relations has good career prospects." "With what money? And who supports the family while I study?" "Someone could sponsor your education, provide for your family while you complete university." Aduni's eyes narrowed slightly. "Someone like you?" The directness of her question forced Karim to confront the calculating nature of his interest. She had seen through his casual conversation to the underlying agenda, just as she had seen through his excessive payment for the screen protector. "Hypothetically," he said carefully. "Nothing is hypothetical with businessmen," she replied. "Everything has purpose, everything has price. You want something from me. Question is what, and what you offer in return." The conversation had reached a critical juncture. Karim could retreat into polite small talk and plan a more gradual approach, or he could acknowledge her perceptiveness and move directly to more serious territory. "You're right," he said. "I do want something. I want to take you to dinner tonight. Somewhere nice, somewhere we can talk without interruption. And in return, I offer you the opportunity to spend an evening with someone who finds your intelligence as impressive as your beauty." "Intelligence first, beauty second." There was amusement in her voice now. "Intelligence is what caught my attention. Beauty is what made me want to know more." Aduni was quiet for a long moment, studying his face. "You are married?" "No." "Girlfriend?" "No." "Children?" "No." "And you live in Lebanon?" "Yes, but I travel frequently for business." "So you are a wealthy Lebanese businessman with no family, no commitments, who travels to Lagos and decides to ask a street vendor to dinner." "When you put it like that, it does sound unlikely." "It sounds impossible," she corrected. Unless what?" "Unless you are a man who bets on impossible things." The phrase sent a chill through Karim. Could she possibly know about the bet? Has his surveillance been compromised? Or was she simply perceptive enough to recognize that his interest in her didn't follow normal patterns? "What makes you say that?" he asked carefully. "Because possible things are boring, and you do not look like a man who does boring things." Karim felt himself smiling despite the tension. "Is that a yes to dinner?" "That is a maybe. I need to think about what impossible thing you might be betting on and whether I want to be part of it." As he walked away from her stall 20 minutes later, Karim realized that the simple transaction he had planned had become something far more complex. Aduni was not just intelligent and independent. She was perceptive enough to see through surface motivations to underlying agendas. She would not be easily manipulated, impressed, or won, which meant that winning her would be either much harder than he had anticipated, or much more meaningful than he had intended. For the first time since accepting the bet, Karim found himself wondering which outcome he actually preferred. The restaurant Karim chose was a calculated risk, not the most expensive in Lagos. That would have been obvious manipulation, but elegant enough to demonstrate serious intent. Nok-by Alara sat in the heart of Victoria Island, its minimalist design and fusion cuisine representing the new Lagos, sophisticated, international, confident. Adoni arrived exactly on time, which surprised him. In his experience, people used lateness as a power play, especially when meeting someone of significantly higher economic status. But she walked through the restaurant's glass doors at precisely 8 p.m., wearing a simple black dress that managed to look both modest and striking. What surprised him more was his own reaction. The careful, analytical mindset he had maintained all day dissolved the moment he saw her in this new context. Away from the chaos and commerce of the market, Adoni carried herself with a quiet elegance that had nothing to do with clothing or makeup. She moved through the upscale restaurant without intimidation or self-consciousness, observing everything but judging nothing. "You look beautiful," he said as she approached their table. "Thank you. You look nervous." The observation was so unexpected that Karim actually laughed. "Do I?" Like a man who planned this evening very carefully but is not sure his plan will work. She settled into her chair, studying the restaurant's interior with frank curiosity. "This place is very nice, very expensive. Does that bother you?" "No. But it tells me you want to impress me, which makes me wonder why my impression matters to you." Their waiter approached, a young Nigerian man who clearly recognized Karim as someone important, but treated Adoni with equal respect. Karim noted this detail, filing it away as evidence of her natural dignity. "Wine?" Karim suggested. "I don't drink alcohol. Religious reasons?" "Practical ones. Clear head makes better decisions." Another unexpected response. Most people in her economic situation would have accepted expensive wine as part of the experience, regardless of personal preference. Adoni's refusal suggested either strong principles or deliberate resistance to anything that might cloud her. Judgment, they ordered. She chose carefully from the menu, asking questions about preparation methods and ingredients with the precision of someone accustomed to making every expense count. Karim found himself watching her more than talking, fascinated by the way she navigated this foreign environment without losing her essential self. "You said you wanted to talk without interruption," she said once their orders were placed. "So, talk. What would you like to know?" "Everything you didn't tell me this morning. Why you are really in Lagos. Why you approached me specifically. What you actually want." The directness was both refreshing and dangerous. Karim had prepared several cover stories, each designed to reveal just enough truth to seem honest while concealing the actual bet. But facing Adoni across the table, he found himself reluctant to deploy practiced deceptions. "I'm here on business," he said, "exploring new shipping routes, meeting potential partners." "And you met me by accident." "Yes. But you came back to my stall 3 times before speaking to me." Karim's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. "You noticed." "I notice everything. Man in expensive clothes walking through Alaba Market stands out. Man who comes back multiple times but never buys anything stands out more." She had been aware of his surveillance from the beginning. The realization forced him to completely recalibrate his assessment of the situation. "Why didn't you say anything?" "I wanted to see what you were planning." "And what did you conclude?" Adoni leaned back in her chair, studying him with eyes that missed nothing. "You are either a very lonely man looking for connection in an unusual place, or a very calculating man running some kind of operation. Since you are a successful businessman who could have connections anywhere, I think you are calculating." "That's a harsh assessment." "Is it wrong?" Karim set down his fork, abandoning any pretense of casual dinner conversation. "What if it's both? What if I'm calculating and lonely? Then I would ask why you choose to be lonely when you have resources to be anything else." The question hit deeper than she probably intended. Why was he lonely? He had wealth, status, access to any social circle he chose. Yet he spent most evenings alone in his penthouse, most vacations traveling solo, most celebrations marking business victories with employees rather than friends. Perhaps because most connections feel transactional, he said honestly. People want something from me, business opportunities, social access, financial security. It becomes difficult to distinguish between genuine interest and strategic positioning. So you test people. I evaluate situations, like you evaluated me. Yes. Aduni nodded slowly. And what was your evaluation? This was the moment of truth. Karim could continue the manipulation, deploy the calculated responses designed to make her feel special and chosen, or he could risk honesty and see how she responded to the truth. I thought you would be easier to impress, he admitted. Someone overwhelmed by wealth, grateful for attention, susceptible to the fantasy of rescue from difficult circumstances. And now? Now I think you're the most self-possessed person I've met in years, and impressing you would require something I'm not sure I have, which is authenticity. The word hung between them as their main courses arrived. They ate in contemplative silence for several minutes, each processing the implications of what had been said. Why did you really ask me to dinner? Aduni asked finally. Karim looked at her across the table, intelligent, dignified, completely unimpressed by the expensive restaurant or his obvious wealth. Everything about her challenged his assumptions about human motivation and social dynamics. Because you made me curious, he said. I've spent 15 years in business, negotiating with everyone from street merchants to government ministers. I can usually predict how people will respond to certain stimuli, money, status, opportunity, but you don't respond predictably to anything. Maybe because I don't want what you think I want. What do you want? She considered the question carefully. Respect. Honest work that uses my mind, not just my survival instincts. Security for my family that doesn't depend on anyone else's charity or mood. And someday, when my siblings are educated and independent, I want to finish what I started at university, international relations, development economics. I want to understand why some people have everything while others have nothing, and whether that difference is necessary or just convenient for those who benefit from it. The answer revealed layers of political and social awareness that Karim hadn't anticipated. This wasn't just personal ambition, it was intellectual engagement with systemic inequality. Her interest in economics would make her naturally suspicious of wealthy men bearing gifts. And what's your preliminary conclusion? He asked. About inequality being necessary versus convenient? I think it's mostly convenient. Rich people convince themselves that poor people deserve their poverty because that makes wealth feel moral instead of accidental. You think my wealth is accidental? I think your birth circumstances gave you opportunities that my birth circumstances didn't. What you did with those opportunities shows intelligence and drive. But having them in the first place was an accident of geography and family. It was the most sophisticated analysis of privilege and opportunity that Karim had heard outside academic conferences. Coming from a woman selling phone cases in a Lagos market, it forced him to confront assumptions he hadn't even realized he held. That's a fair assessment, he said. Most wealthy people don't think so. Most wealthy people haven't spent the evening being systematically outmaneuvered by someone they underestimated. Aduni smiled for the first time that evening, not the polite smile she used with customers, but something genuine and slightly amused. You feel outmaneuvered? Completely. I came here thinking I understood the dynamics of this situation. Now I'm not sure I understand anything. What did you think you understood? Karim hesitated. The honest answer would reveal too much about the bet, about his initial motivations, about the calculating nature of his approach. But dishonesty felt increasingly impossible in the face of her direct questions and obvious intelligence. I thought I understood how to make you interested. In me, he said carefully. And how was that supposed to work? demonstrate wealth and status, offer security and opportunity, present myself as someone who could transform your circumstances. In exchange for what? The question was asked quietly, but it carried the weight of accumulated experience with men who offered transformation at a price. Companionship, Karim said. Affection, the possibility of something meaningful, but not partnership. What do you mean? You wanted to transform my circumstances, not learn about my perspective. You wanted to offer me your world, not explore. Mine, that's not companionship, that's acquisition. The word hit like a physical blow. Acquisition. She had identified exactly what he was attempting, stripped away all pretense and romantic language to reveal the transactional core of his approach. You're right, he said quietly. I usually am about these things. They finished dinner in a different kind of silence, not uncomfortable, but charged with new understanding. Karim found himself genuinely curious about her thoughts on everything from Lagos politics to international trade policy. Aduni answered his questions with the analytical precision of someone who had clearly thought deeply about complex issues despite lacking access to formal education resources. As they prepared to leave, she asked, "What happens now?" "I don't know," Karim admitted. "My plan didn't extend beyond impressing you with dinner. And since you didn't impress me, since I didn't impress you, I'm improvising." "I wasn't completely unimpressed," she said, as they walked toward the exit. "No, you admitted when you were wrong. You answered questions honestly even when honesty didn't serve your purposes. And you listened to my opinions without trying to correct or discount them." She paused at the restaurant's entrance. Those are rare qualities in powerful men. Outside, Lagos hummed with its characteristic evening energy. Traffic, music, conversation, and commerce blended into the city's distinctive soundtrack. Karim's driver waited beside the car, but Aduni made no move toward it. "I'll take the bus home," she said. "At least let me drive you." "That would send the wrong message to my neighbors." "What message?" "That I am woman who accepts rides from wealthy foreign men. In my neighborhood, that has specific implications." Another consideration Karim hadn't anticipated. His offer of convenience carried social costs she would have to manage long after he returned to Lebanon. "Tomorrow?" he asked. "Tomorrow I work." "After work?" She studied his face in the restaurant's ambient lighting. "Why do you want to see me again?" "Because tonight didn't go according to plan. And I want to find out what happens when I stop planning." "That could be dangerous." "For whom?" "For both of us," she said quietly, then walked away toward the bus stop before he could respond. Karim stood watching until she disappeared into the crowd, feeling like he had just experienced something unprecedented in his carefully controlled life. For the first time in years, he had no strategy, no clear objectives, no sense of how to achieve a desired outcome. And surprisingly, the uncertainty felt more exciting than terrifying. Karim spent the night staring at the ceiling of his hotel suite, replaying every moment of dinner with Aduni. His business partners had been waiting in the lobby when he returned, eager for updates on Operation Acquisition, their code name for the bet. He had dismissed them with vague promises of progress, unable to articulate what had actually transpired. The truth was unsettling. His carefully constructed plan was disintegrating, replaced by something he couldn't name or control. Worse, he found himself caring more about Aduni's opinion of him than about winning the $40 million shipping contract. At 6 a.m., his phone buzzed with a message from Samir. "Day 2. Clock is ticking. Need to accelerate the timeline if marriage is happening tomorrow." The reminder hit like cold water. He had less than 36 hours to propose, convince her to accept, and organize a legal wedding ceremony. In his fascination with Aduni's intelligence and independence, he had nearly forgotten the ultimate objective. But now, facing the practical requirements of the bet, Karim realized he had no idea how to propose marriage to someone who had already identified his approach as acquisition rather than courtship. He arrived at Alaba Market before Aduni opened her stall, positioning himself at a nearby tea vendor to observe her morning routine. She moved with characteristic efficiency, unlocking her storage box, arranging inventory, cleaning her display surface with methodical care. Everything about her suggested someone who approached life with deliberate intention. At 9 a.m., he approached her table. "You're early today," she said without looking up from her phone case display. "I wanted to see you to continue your improvisation." Something like that. Karim pulled out a small leather notebook and set it on her table. "I brought you something." Aduni glanced at the notebook, then at him. "What is it?" "Information about development economics programs at universities in Beirut, Cairo, and Dubai. Scholarship opportunities, admission requirements, program curricula, all the details you would need to finish your degree." She picked up the notebook, flipping through pages of printed research. Her expression was unreadable, but Karim noticed her hands trembling slightly as she read. "Why did you do this?" she asked quietly. "Because last night you said you wanted to finish what you started. I thought you should know what options exist. These are very expensive programs. Some have full scholarships for qualified international students. Others have work-study arrangements that would cover tuition and living expenses." Aduni continued reading, her focus absolute. Several minutes passed before she spoke again. "This university in Cairo, they have a partnership with the United Nations Development Program. Students can work on field projects while completing coursework. That caught my attention too. Seemed like something you would find interesting." "It would be perfect," she said, then closed the notebook and set it aside. "Which is why I'm suspicious of your motives in giving it to me." "What do you mean?" "Yesterday, you wanted to transform my circumstances by offering me your world. Today, you research ways for me to transform my own circumstances. Either you had dramatic change of heart overnight, or this is more sophisticated manipulation than dinner and expensive gifts." The accusation stung because it contained just enough truth to be uncomfortable. Karim had researched the programs, partly out of genuine interest in her goals, but also as a strategic move designed to demonstrate understanding and support for her ambitions. "Maybe it's both," he said. "Maybe I want to help you achieve your goals, and I want you to appreciate my help." "And what do you want in return for this help?" The question he had been dreading. In 18 hours, he needed to propose marriage and convince her to accept. Every moment of delay made the timeline more impossible. "I want you to consider spending your life with me," he said. The words came out more bluntly than intended. Aduni's eyes widened slightly, the first time he had seen her genuinely surprised. "Spending my life with you," she repeated slowly. "Marriage. Partnership, building something together. We met yesterday, I know. You know nothing about me except what you observed from watching my business and what I told you over dinner. I know enough." "Enough for what?" "Enough to decide you want to marry me, or enough to decide marriage to me serves some purpose for you." Again, her perceptiveness cut straight to the heart of his duplicity. "Why can't it be both?" he asked. "Because marriage should be about wanting someone, not using someone." Karim felt the conversation slipping away from him. Every response seemed to confirm her suspicions about his ulterior motives. "What if I said I want you?" I would ask why. "What specifically do you want about me that you couldn't find in hundreds of other women with more education, more wealth, more social status?" The question forced him to confront his actual motivations. What did he want from Aduni? Her intelligence impressed him, her dignity commanded respect, her independence challenged his assumptions. But underneath all those admirable qualities was something else, something that had nothing to do with the bet and everything to do with the way she made him feel uncertain, off balance, forced to be honest. "You make me feel like I don't know everything," he said finally. "That's what you want in a wife. Someone who makes you feel ignorant. Someone who makes me feel curious. Someone who challenges me to be better than I am. And you think marriage is the appropriate response to curiosity?" "I think marriage is the appropriate response to finding someone remarkable." Aduni was quiet for a long moment, studying his face. Around them, the market bustled with its usual energy, but their conversation had created another island of intensity. "There's something you're not telling me," she said finally. "What do you mean? This urgency. Yesterday you were interested. Today you're proposing marriage. That's not normal human behavior, especially for successful businessmen who can afford to take time making important decisions." Karim felt his carefully constructed facade cracking under the pressure of her observation. She was too intelligent, too perceptive, too unwilling to accept surface explanations. "What if I told you there was a deadline?" he asked. "What kind of deadline? What if I told you I had to return to Lebanon soon, and I didn't want to leave without knowing where we stand?" "I would ask why you couldn't return later, or why I couldn't visit Lebanon to continue getting to know each other like normal people. Do. And if I said those options weren't available, then I would ask what you're really doing here." The moment of truth had arrived. Karim could continue spinning elaborate explanations that she would systematically dismantle, or he could risk everything on honesty. "I made a bet," he said quietly. "What kind of bet? My business partners challenged me to marry someone completely outside my social circle, someone with no wealth, no connections, no obvious reason to be interested in a Lebanese businessman. And if you win this bet, $40 million in shipping contracts, and if you lose, $50 million plus, I give up on a business acquisition I've been working on for months." Aduni stared at him in complete silence. Her expression shifted from surprise to understanding to something that might have been disappointment or anger. "So I am a business transaction," she said finally. "You were supposed to be. But now I don't know what you are." "I'll tell you what I am," she said, standing up from her stool. "I am a woman who was almost stupid enough to believe a wealthy man might be genuinely interested in her as a person, instead of as a trophy or challenge or bet." "Aduni, wait." "No, you wait. You sit here and think about what it feels like to have someone evaluate you as an investment opportunity while pretending to care about your dreams and goals." She began packing up her inventory with sharp, angry movements. University research, dinner conversation, all of it was just a strategy to win a bet. Not all of it. How much? How much was real versus how much was manipulation? Karim tried to answer, but realized he didn't know. Where did his strategic interest in her end and his genuine fascination begin? When had he stopped calculating responses and started speaking honestly? "I don't know," he admitted. "Then we have nothing more to discuss." She finished packing her goods and stood to leave. Karim felt something like panic rising in his chest. Not about losing the bet, but about losing her. "What if I forfeit the bet?" he asked. She stopped walking. "What?" "What if I call my partners right now and tell them I'm forfeiting? No marriage, no manipulation, no $40 million. Just you and me figuring out if there's something real here. You would give up $40 million to prove that my interest in you isn't just about winning a bet?" "Yes." Aduni turned around slowly, studying his face with the same analytical intensity she had shown from their first meeting. "And then what? You returned to Lebanon, and I returned to selling phone cases, and we pretend this conversation never happened. Or you consider applying to that university in Cairo, and I consider whether there are business opportunities in Lagos that might keep me here longer. Business opportunities in Lagos. Shipping routes, market development, cultural exchange. Programs. I could find reasons to be here regularly while I'm studying in Cairo. Cairo is closer to Beirut than Lagos is. She shook her head slowly. You're still thinking like a businessman, problem-solving, logistics, and strategic positioning. How should I be thinking? Like a man who wants to know a woman well enough to love her, instead of a man who wants to acquire a woman impressive enough to win a bet. The distinction hit him with surprising force. Everything about his approach, even his offer to forfeit the bet, was still transactional, still focused on achieving a desired outcome rather than genuinely exploring human connection. "Teach me," he said. "What?" "Teach me how to think differently. I've spent 15 years approaching every relationship like a business negotiation. I don't know how to want someone without trying to win them." Aduni looked at him for a long moment, then set down her packed inventory. "If you're serious about learning," she said, "then start by telling your partners the bet is off, not as strategy to impress me, but because betting on someone's emotions is wrong, regardless of whether you win or lose. And then you go back to your hotel and think about whether you want to spend time with me because I'm interesting, or because I'm challenging, or because I make you feel things you're not used to feeling. And tomorrow, if you still want to see me, you come back, not with research or gifts or proposals, but just with honest interest in getting to know me better." "That's it? That's everything," she said. "Everything real starts with honesty." As she walked away through the crowded market, Karim stood watching her disappear into the flow of people and commerce. In his pocket, his phone buzzed with another message from Samir about timeline and logistics. For the first time in his adult life, Karim Mansouri had to choose between winning and being honest. The choice, he realized, would define everything. That happened next. The elevator ride to his hotel suite felt like ascending through layers of his own deception. Karim's reflection in the polished steel doors showed a man he barely recognized, someone who looked uncertain, conflicted, almost vulnerable. In less than 24 hours, he had gone from complete control to complete chaos, and the transformation left him questioning everything he thought he knew about himself. His business partners were waiting in the suite sitting area, laptops open, documents spread across the coffee table. They looked up expectantly as he entered, their faces bright with anticipation of progress reports and strategic updates. "How did she respond to the proposal?" Fadi asked immediately. Karim walked past them to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lagos. The city sprawled endlessly in all directions, millions of people pursuing millions of different dreams. Somewhere down there, Aduni was probably explaining to her family why she had come home early from work, why she looked upset, why she was staring at a notebook full of university information with an expression they couldn't interpret. She said, "No," he said without turning around. "No?" Samir's voice carried genuine surprise. "What exactly did you offer her?" "Marriage, partnership, a life together." And she refused. Fadi was already pulling up his tablet, scrolling through backup plans. "Did you explain the financial benefits, the opportunities for her family, the complete transformation of her circumstances?" She understood the offer. "Then what went wrong?" Samir stood up, pacing behind the couch. "We researched her thoroughly. Single mother figure to younger siblings, financially responsible for extended family, university education interrupted by economic necessity. She should have been overwhelmed by gratitude." Karim finally turned around, studying the three men who had orchestrated this elaborate bet. They looked exactly like what they were, wealthy, privileged, completely insulated from the reality of most people's lives. They had designed a challenge based on their assumptions about human motivation, particularly the assumption that poverty made people easy to manipulate. "She figured out it was a bet," he said. The silence that followed was profound. Fadi set down his tablet. Samir stopped pacing. The third partner, who had been quietly reviewing legal documents, looked up with alarm. "How?" Fadi asked finally. "Because she's intelligent. Because my timeline was suspicious. Because I'm apparently not as skilled at deception as I believed." "What exactly did you tell her?" "Everything. The $40 million contract, the $50 million penalty, the whole arrangement." "Jesus, Karim." Samir collapsed back onto the couch. "Do you understand what you've done? If this gets out, if she talks to the media, the reputational damage alone could cost us hundreds of millions. Betting on marriage, treating women like commodities." "She won't talk to the media," Karim interrupted. "How can you be sure?" "Because she has too much dignity to participate in a public spectacle, even as the victim." Fadi was already calculating damage control scenarios. "We need legal agreements, non-disclosure contracts, financial incentives." For her silence. "No!" The word came out with enough force to stop all conversation. Karim's partners stared at him with expressions of confusion and growing alarm. "No what?" Samir asked carefully. "No legal agreements, no financial incentives, no damage control. We're calling off the bet." "Calling it off?" Fadi's voice rose. "Karim, this is $40 million we're talking about, plus the Khoury acquisition. You can't just—" "I can and I am." "On what grounds?" "On the grounds that betting on someone's emotions is morally reprehensible, and I should never have agreed to participate." The three men exchanged glances that clearly questioned Karim's mental state. In their world, moral reprehensibility was a luxury that successful businessmen couldn't afford. "She really got to you, didn't she?" Samir said softly. "One conversation with a street vendor and you're ready to throw away the biggest deal of the year." "Multiple conversations. And she's not just a street vendor. She's someone with more integrity than the three of us combined." "Integrity doesn't pay shipping contracts," Fadi pointed out. "Neither does winning a bet through manipulation and deception." "Since when do you care about manipulation and deception?" Samir was genuinely bewildered. "Your entire business model is based on identifying people's weaknesses and exploiting them for profit." The observation hit like a physical blow because it was absolutely accurate. Karim had built his fortune by finding companies in vulnerable positions and acquiring them at below-market prices. He had manipulated market conditions, exploited regulatory loopholes, and used insider information to gain advantages over competitors. His success was entirely built on strategic manipulation. "Maybe that's the problem," he said quietly. "What problem?" "Maybe I've been approaching everything wrong for 15 years. His partners stared at him in collective shock. This wasn't the calculated, ruthless businessman they had known since university. This was someone having what appeared to be a moral crisis in the middle of a major financial transaction. "Karim," Fadi said carefully, "I think you need to step back and consider what you're saying. You're talking about abandoning core business principles that have made you incredibly successful to impress a woman who already rejected you." Samir added, "A woman who, I might point out, has nothing to offer you in return. She offers me the chance to be someone better than I am. That's not a business model. Maybe business shouldn't be my only model for life." The conversation was interrupted by Karim's phone buzzing with a text message. He glanced at the screen, expecting another logistics update from his assistant. Instead, he saw a message from an unfamiliar Lagos number. "If you meant what you said about forfeiting a bet, meet me at the National Theatre tomorrow at 10 a.m. If you didn't, please don't contact me again." The message hit him with unexpected emotional force. She had given him another chance, one final opportunity to prove that his interest in her extended beyond winning a wager. "Who's that?" Samir asked, noticing Karim's expression. "Aduni. She wants to meet me tomorrow." "Perfect." Fadi was already reaching for his tablet. We can still salvage this. If you propose again, emphasize the economic benefits for her family. Maybe offer to sponsor her siblings' education. You're not listening, Karim interrupted. The bet is over. I'm forfeiting. You can't forfeit without our agreement, Samir said. We all signed contracts. There are legal obligations. Then I'll pay the 50 million penalty myself and give up the Khoury acquisition. Consider it my resignation from whatever this partnership has become. The silence that followed was heavy with implications. Karim wasn't just withdrawing from a single bet. He was severing business relationships that had defined his career for over a decade. You're serious about this, Fadi said finally. Completely. Because of one woman you met 3 days ago. Because of what one woman made me realize about myself. Samir stood up, gathering his documents with sharp, angry movements. Fine. Forfeit the bet. Pay the penalty. Destroy business relationships and financial opportunities for the sake of impressing someone who has already made it clear she's not interested. But don't expect us to pretend this makes any kind of rational sense. I'm not asking you to pretend anything. I'm asking you to understand that some things are more important than money. Like what? Like being able to look at yourself in the mirror without feeling disgusted by what you see. The 3 men left without another word, taking their laptops and legal documents and 20 years of shared business history. Karim stood alone in the luxury suite, surrounded by the material symbols of his success, feeling simultaneously liberated and terrified. That night, he lay awake thinking about the meeting at the National Theatre. What did Aduni want to discuss? Was she giving him a chance to prove his sincerity or saying goodbye properly? Either way, he would meet her without agenda, without strategy, without any goal beyond honest conversation. The next morning, he arrived at the National Theatre 30 minutes early. The building stood as a monument to Nigerian culture and artistic achievement, its distinctive architecture reflecting the country's blend of traditional and modern influences. Karim had never visited a cultural institution without considering its potential business applications, tourism development, event hosting, corporate partnerships. Today, he simply appreciated it as a beautiful space. Aduni arrived precisely at 10 a.m., wearing the same simple blue dress from their first conversation. She moved through the theater's courtyard with purpose, but her expression was unreadable. "You came," she said as she approached. "You gave me another chance. I wasn't going to waste it." "Did you call off the bet?" "Yes. I told my partners last. A knight paid the 50 million penalty this morning, also gave up the business acquisition that was part of the stakes. That was expensive conversation, not as expensive as losing the opportunity to know you better." Aduni studied his face carefully. "And your partners? How did they respond?" "They think I've lost my mind. They're probably right." "Have you?" Karim considered the question seriously. Had he lost his mind? He had just destroyed profitable business relationships and forfeited enormous financial opportunities for the sake of someone who might not even be interested in continuing their acquaintance. If sanity means prioritizing money over everything else, then yes, I've lost my mind completely. And if it means something different, then maybe I'm finally finding it. They walked through the theater complex in comfortable silence, observing the blend of visitors, artists, and cultural enthusiasts who filled the space with creative energy. "I have something to tell you," Aduni said, as they sat on a bench overlooking the theater's main plaza. "What?" "I applied to the university program. In Cairo, the one you researched." Karim felt his heart skip. "Already?" "Last night. Online application. Submitted my transcripts and essays. Paid the fee with money I had been saving for my sister's school uniform." "That's wonderful. When will you hear back?" 6 weeks for preliminary review, then interviews if I'm selected. As a finalist, You'll be selected. Your academic record and real-world experience make you an ideal candidate. Maybe, but that's not why I'm telling you. Why then? Aduni turned to face him directly. Because if I get accepted, I'll be leaving Lagos in 4 months, moving to Cairo for 3 years of intensive study. That means any relationship I start now needs to be with someone who understands that my education comes first, my family responsibilities come second, and romance comes third. I understand. Do you? Because most men say they understand until it becomes inconvenient for them. Try me. She smiled slightly. That's what I'm doing. Try you. What does that mean? It means I'm willing to see if there's something real between us, but only if you're willing to do it properly. No more research projects designed to impress me. No more expensive dinners meant to overwhelm me. No more proposals after 3 days of acquaintance. What would properly look like? Getting to know each other like normal people, conversations, shared experiences, learning about each other's lives and goals and fears. Building friendship first, then seeing if it develops into something more. And if you get accepted to university, then we figure out whether what we've built is strong enough to survive distance and time and the changes that come with education and growth. Karim felt something he hadn't experienced in years, genuine hope mixed with genuine uncertainty. No guaranteed outcomes, no calculated strategies, just the possibility of something real, developing between 2 people who had found each other through the most unlikely circumstances. I'd like that, he said. Then let's start properly. Aduni said, extending her hand. I'm Aduni Okafor. I sell phone accessories, support my family, and dream of becoming a development economist. What's your name? Karim shook her hand, feeling like he was introducing himself for the first time in his adult life. I'm Karim Mansouri. I used to think business was everything, but I'm learning there might be more to life than winning. 3 months later, Karim found himself in a place he had never imagined, genuinely happy without a business agenda. His courtship of Aduni had been everything she demanded, patient, honest, built on friendship rather than transaction. They met for lunch twice a week, took long walks through Lagos neighborhoods he had never explored, and had conversations that challenged every assumption he held about success, purpose, and human connection. When the acceptance letter from Cairo University arrived, Aduni's joy was so pure and infectious that Karim felt it as his own victory. She had been selected, not just for admission, but for a full scholarship that would cover tuition, housing, and a modest living stipend. Her dream of completing her education in development economics was finally within reach. I leave in 2 weeks, she told him, as they sat in a small restaurant in Ikeja, sharing a meal of jollof rice and grilled fish. The intensive program starts. Immediately. I'm proud of you, Karim said, and meant it completely. This is everything you worked for. Not everything, she said quietly. I'll miss Lagos. I'll miss my family. I'll miss... me? You. The admission hung between them, carrying weight that neither had acknowledged before. Over 3 months of careful courtship, they had built something genuine, not the desperate gratitude Karim had originally sought to exploit, but mutual respect, intellectual compatibility, and the beginning of real love. Marry me, he said suddenly. Aduni set down her fork, startled. Karim. Not because of a bet or a timeline or any kind of pressure. Marry me because I love you, and I want to support your dreams, and I think we could build something beautiful together. You want to marry me before I leave for university? I want to marry you before you leave, so you know that someone believes in you completely, supports your education unconditionally, and will be here when you return with your degree. And you would move to Cairo. I would move anywhere. I've been exploring business opportunities in Egypt, legitimate ones, not manufactured excuses to follow you. There's real potential for shipping routes through Alexandria, partnerships with Suez Canal authorities. I could build something meaningful there while you study." Aduni was quiet for a long moment, processing his proposal. "This is different from your first proposal. Everything is different now. How do I know this isn't just more sophisticated manipulation? Wealthy man supporting poor woman's education in exchange for marriage and gratitude. Because if you say no, I'll still help you succeed. I'll still celebrate your achievements. I'll still care about your happiness, even if I'm not part of it. You would do that? I would do that." She studied his face with the same analytical intensity she had shown from their first meeting, looking for signs of deception or hidden agenda. "What changed you?" she asked finally. "You did, but not in the way I expected." "How then?" "I thought you would change by becoming grateful for what I could offer. Instead, I changed by learning what I was missing, which was purpose beyond profit, connection based on respect rather than transaction, the satisfaction of supporting someone else's dreams instead of just pursuing my own." Aduni reached across the table and took his hand. "If I say yes, and I'm not saying yes yet, what would our marriage look like? Like a partnership. You pursue your education and career goals. I build business ventures that align with development economics principles. We support each other's growth, challenge each other's assumptions, and build a life based on shared values rather than shared convenience. And if my career requires me to work in rural villages or conflict zones or places where wealthy Lebanese businessmen don't typically go, then I learn new skills and find ways to be useful in those environments, or I support you from a distance and celebrate your achievements when you return. You would really do that?" "I would really do that." They were married 2 days before her departure for Cairo in a simple ceremony at Lagos Civil Registry. Aduni wore a traditional Nigerian dress that had belonged to her grandmother. Karim wore a white kaftan that she had helped him select from a local tailor. Her siblings served as witnesses, along with 2 of Karim's Lebanese business contacts who had remained friends despite his decision to forfeit the bet. The wedding was everything. The original best ceremony was supposed to mock genuine emotion, mutual respect, families coming together across cultural differences. There were no cameras, no headlines, no social media coverage, just 2 people making promises they intended to keep. Their honeymoon was a weekend in Calabar, a quiet city in southeastern Nigeria where they could be tourists together without the intensity of Lagos. They stayed in a modest hotel overlooking the Cross River, spent their days exploring local markets and cultural sites, and talked about the future they were building together. On their last evening, as they sat on the hotel balcony watching the sunset, Aduni said something that would echo in Karim's memory forever. "I have a confession," she said softly. "What?" "I knew about the bet from the beginning." Karim felt the world shift beneath him. "What do you mean?" "My friend Kemi works as a cleaning lady at Echo Hotel. She heard your partners discussing the challenge when she was cleaning the suite next to yours. She told me about the wealthy Lebanese businessman who was supposed to marry a poor Nigerian woman to win $40 million. The revelation hit Karim like a physical blow. "You knew the whole time?" "From the first day you approached my stall." "Then why?" Karim struggled to process the implications. "Why did you go to dinner with me? Why did you give me chances to be honest?" "Because I wanted to see what kind of man you really were, whether you would admit the truth when confronted, whether you would choose money over conscience, whether you were capable of genuine change. And when I told you about the bet that day in the market, I was testing whether you would be honest, even when you thought the truth would cost you everything." Karim stared at her, feeling like he was seeing her clearly for the first time. "You were manipulating me. I was evaluating you just like you were evaluating me, but you were doing it to test my character. I was doing it to win money. Exactly. That's the difference between us. The silence that followed was profound. Karim felt simultaneously betrayed and awed by her strategic thinking. She had been 3 steps ahead of him throughout their entire courtship, allowing him to reveal his true nature while protecting herself from real emotional harm. "Do you love me?" he asked quietly. "I do now. I didn't at first, but I do now." "How do I know that's true?" "Because I married you after the bet was over, because I chose you when you had nothing to offer me except honesty and respect. Because I could have exposed your deception publicly and destroyed your reputation. But instead, I gave you the chance to become someone worth loving. And if I hadn't changed, if I had continued trying to manipulate you, then I would have disappeared from Lagos and you never would have seen me again. I had contingency plans, alternative housing arrangements, even backup university applications. I was never as vulnerable as you thought." Karim laughed despite himself, a sound mixing admiration, disbelief, and genuine amusement. "You are the most formidable person I've ever met." "I had to be. The world is not kind to women like me. Intelligence and dignity are the only armor we have. And now I have a partner who chose to be worthy of my trust instead of trying to exploit my circumstances. That's worth more than any amount of money your friends were betting." As they prepared for bed that night, their last night together before her departure for Cairo, Karim reflected on the extraordinary woman he had married. She had turned his attempted manipulation into a test of his character, his deception into an opportunity for growth, his cynical bet into the foundation for genuine love. The truth that broke his heart wasn't devastating in the way he had feared. It was humbling in a way he hadn't expected. Aduni had seen through every layer of his deception while giving him space to choose authenticity. She had protected herself while creating opportunities for him to become someone better. 3 days later, he stood at Lagos airport, watching his wife board a plane to Cairo, knowing that she carried with her not just his love, but his deepest respect. She had taught him that real power wasn't the ability to manipulate others, but the wisdom to recognize when someone was trying to manipulate you, and the grace to help them choose a better path. 6 months later, Karim's former business partners would read in the newspapers about a Lebanese shipping executive who had established a development fund supporting education for underprivileged women across West Africa. The fund's first recipient was a brilliant economics student at Cairo University whose research on sustainable trade practices was revolutionizing academic understanding of poverty reduction. The wealthy men who had once bet on breaking a poor woman's heart never understood that she had instead repaired a broken man's soul. Sometimes the greatest victories come not from winning what you thought you wanted, but from discovering what you actually needed. And sometimes the people we underestimate become the teachers who show us who we were meant to be all along. Love, it turned out, was the only transaction where everyone could win, but only when both parties choose honesty over strategy, respect over manipulation, and growth over conquest. In the end, Karim learned that the most valuable acquisitions couldn't be purchased or won. They could only be earned through the patient work of becoming someone worthy of being chosen in return. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.